Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Hi Rogers, can I ask you something?
Shoot.
What does corruption mean?
Well, summarily, corruption is abuse of public power for personal gain or for the benefit of a group to which one owes allegiance. For example, when a public office is abused by an official accepting or soliciting a bribe. By the way, private people can be corrupt too, like bribing police officers to escape fines.
Okay. So exactly how does that concern me?
Well, do you pay taxes?
I guess, yeah. What does that have to do with this?
Everything. Because those taxes you pay are supposed to facilitate services you use, like water, electricity, roads construction, medicines in hospitals, name it.
Okay, that is much bigger than I thought. But it can be stopped, right?
Well, yes it can, although it may not be as easy as it sounds. And here is the reason why. Corruption roots are grounded in our country's social, political, economic, bureaucratic traditions and policies.
So, what has kept it going this long? I mean, why don't we stop it?
Well, the main reason why it has been here for so long is because institutions are weak, either as a result of poorly defined ethical standards of public service, weak administrative and financial systems, or ineffective watchdog agencies.
What can we do to stop it?
At a national level, we must focus on strengthening the independence and effectiveness of public institutions that fight corruption. At a personal level, we must commit to never giving a bribe.
I promise I'll never give a bribe.
Well, that's a great decision you have made. Me and you now have to spread this message to all our friends. If we all do our part, corruption will be no more.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digital. The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
The Hotline Show. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this edition of the Hotline Show. My name is Edgar Matthew Karahanga, sitting in for Mr. Rogers Turiahawe, who's not available today. And of course, you know, every Monday starting from 7 to 9 p.m., we're always here talking about some of the things that are happening in the country, that is the Pearl of Africa and of course beyond. But we try to touch base on some of those issues that are affecting Ugandans, some of those issues that are making news right here in East Africa, but also trying to find solutions to those particular challenges that may come up in the politics of this country, in the social life, in the economic life, and just generally as Ugandans. How can we be better people? How can we achieve better democracy? How can we really be involved in changing the narrative in this country, but also changing the dynamics that are always happening here? And of course today we're going to be focusing on the role of unity, really, or the importance of unity in fostering good governance, and of course also highlighting on the issue of the opposition mainly. How best can they take power in this country? Is unity the way to go? We've seen it work in some countries before, but is it something that we're going to work today? And of course, when talking about unity, we're talking about political parties. So can they unite together? Is this something that can forge a more strong resilience against Mr. Museveni, who they've dubbed a dictator and who has been in power for 37 years right here in Uganda? So is unity something that we can think about? Is there something we can add? Are there some other ways that we can be able to achieve unity and of course opposition taking power in this country? Those are some of the dynamics that we're going to be looking at tonight. And of course, every particular Monday we have Mr. Joseph Ochieno from UPC, a gentleman who has been here every Monday, who tries to talk about how this country is going and of course trying to devise means in his wisdom of making Uganda a better place. Later on, we shall be joined by Mr. Gideon Tugume, self-proclaimed president of the poor, he'll be talking about this particular issue, and of course we shall be also listening from you subsequently as we continue with this program. Later on, you can just send in a message directly on our social media platforms. We are at The Alternative Uganda, that is on Facebook, The Alternative Uganda on Twitter, and all other social media platforms. But you can also find us at Digitalk TV. that is still on Facebook, YouTube, and all other social media platforms. I'll be glad if I can hear from you today. And of course, if you have questions for Mr. Ochieno and anybody who's on this particular discussion, feel free to just send in that direct message. You can, just comment on this particular live feed, and we shall be able to read your messages as we continue with the program. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me welcome Mr. Ochieno Joseph, who is already here. You're welcome, sir, and it's always a privilege and pleasure having you here.
A pleasure to be here with you always. Yes, indeed, I do my best to come here every Monday evening, because I believe it's a fantastic space, actually. I don't know why you're not the leading destination of choice when it comes to television, and particularly television and discussions around this of the hotline.
Yeah.
But also because I believe genuinely that being particularly online for the moment,
Yes,
a critical number of your customers are young people,
Yes.
and that young people are the majority, they're the future, and the mess in this country is basically hurting them the most.
Yes.
And so for that reason, I hope that whatever conversations we have here,
Yes,
they benefit, and that the more we have these conversations, the more I hope many of them will get more interested, many of them share about these programs and this platform, and that the more of them get not only involved, but resolve that they become part of the change in the political parties and organizations in this country, in the leadership of political parties and organizations, and then together that they determine that the future of this country is determined predominantly by themselves.
Okay, you've preempted the question I was going to ask you, because you are somebody, personally I know you, so you always hear every particular month, and that takes commitment, that takes time. So I was going to ask you, why do you keep on coming? What is that? Because in fact, you're not only here, you are common in the media landscape of this country, and you're talking about the very same issues. So before I ask you how these young people can be involved in politics, and before we delve into the conversation, why are you everywhere in the media of Uganda?
Why am I everywhere? I'm not sure that I'm everywhere. There are a few media spaces where I would like to be,
Yes, sir.
and that possibly either because of the editorials or their bosses, their ownerships, or the people who feel their bills, they don't see it fit or comfortable that I should be in their spaces.
Yeah.
But yeah, ideally I would like to be in as much of the media space in this country as possible. I am very much around global media, and talking about Africa and some of these issues.
Yes, sir.
And sometimes I actually wonder, I feel I'm possibly not in enough spaces in Ugandan media, considering that a number of global media spaces find it useful to pick my brains and to share my thoughts, and to listen to what I've got to say about the challenges facing this continent, and sometimes the challenges facing this country, and of course, definitely the challenges facing the youth and therefore the future. I hope that by, obviously giving my time to these kind of programs, I am able to reach out to predominantly young people who I was up to about 30 minutes ago, before coming to your studios, meeting a professor, young professor, very young professor actually, in their 30s, but without prejudice, from the north of the world, meaning a European professor who is here carrying out research, and we're having conversations with him. And he's extremely concerned about the quality of our polity, the quality of our debates, the quality of our intellectual rigor, the amount of time young Ugandans spend reading, the extraordinary absence of information fields that are lacking amongst our population, the extent to which possibly some of our young people would, and I was in Jinja on a different journey, again with Friends of Uganda, promoting Uganda only yesterday, a mother and a fantastic son. But there is this thing going on in Jinja, just conclude that I don't want to promote. But of course, everyone knows about Nyege Nyege.
Yeah.
And this guy was saying that possibly a number of our young people would rather pay 200,000 shillings, up to 200,000 shillings, or 100,000 shillings for that matter, but quite a huge amount of money to get themselves involved in nyege nyege than to pay 5,000 shillings on a border to come and have tea with me, which tea perhaps I might provide them at my space, or perhaps to contribute 10,000 shillings to come and have tea with you and me, and perhaps for them to pay for the granuts, and then we have a conversation about our country. So that really is quite worrying, but also that many more are more likely to do that than to ask to read, for example, a book that the likes of Norman Tumhimse have written on dictatorships and some of the concerns that should affect this country.
Yes,
and perhaps many who would rather do that than to read about Milton Obote, to read about Idi Amin, it's important they do, and to read about Museveni, including the Museveni before the mustard seed, and also to read about Ben Chiwanuka, and to read about the history of this country, and to read about Uganda People's Congress and its foundation, to read about the Democratic Party, to read about the foundations of the Catholic establishment in this country, and the Anglican establishment in this country, and to pull together all those other things that are things and institutions and organizations that directly have impacted on this country and the foundation of this country, and perhaps influence the manner in which we are thinking today. But worse, to read about the contemporary nature of how globalization, and particularly the neoliberal agenda that Mr. Museveni bought into, basically took just like a desperate prostitute down the town, and I'm using those words deliberately, picked from Anglo-America to come and destroy and turn our country into a sweatshop for profit. And in so doing, the mess in which we have in our country today, in which everybody else is about profit and nothing else but profit, in which case anybody can sell anybody just for a little change. That is the Uganda in which we are today. The young Ugandans need really to critically think about some of those things. And once they were to realize that how we've reached, where we came from to reach where we are at the moment, maybe they might seek to put a stop and retune, and in so doing we have a possibility in which we're able to do what I'm trying to do, meaning getting many more of them much more involved, claim ownership, and take the lead and redirect this country in a manner in which there's hope and possibility for what our independence fathers did. But quickly to conclude.
No, before you even conclude, because I want to ask you some issue on that particular story. These young people you're talking about to indulge themselves in political discussions. First of all, they already know the problems of Uganda. Okay, they may not know the past, but what is happening today, with the cost of living, they feel it. The taxation, they feel it. But these young folks are focused on things like nyege nyege you've mentioned. It feels like we are happy people, especially young people, or so it may feel on social media and this. We're talking about parties. If we're not talking about parties, we're talking about who broke up with who. It feels like, is this deliberate? Has this been implanted in these young people? Because when I compare the young folks of your generation, not saying that it's too old, but your generation, the likes of Museveni's in their 20s, they were doing great things. The likes of Obotes, you were already in the politics of this country. You wanted to shape a better Uganda. In fact, most of the young people who participated in the so-called liberation war were young comrades in their 20s, some in their teens. And these people felt they should die for something. What is so different about our generation that we don't feel there's something we need to die for?
It's in part what I told you, that you were initiated into a neoliberal agenda, and you bought into it, and you initiated into that by Mr. Museveni, who allegedly came in claiming to be a socialist and rather Marxist, but he clearly wasn't. But then he went into the Bretton Woods institutions, and then seeking to serve Anglo-America, opened up Uganda as a sweatshop market, and opened up Uganda as a sweatshop market. Anything in dirty conservatism of the West and America came into the streets of Kampala. So anything which was a dollar was going, and anything which was indigenous Uganda was neither here nor there. And the selling point was that anything past was Obote, the cooperatives killed them, Uganda commercial banks killed them, the railways killed them, anything that showed any of those guys killed them, and then you begin to retune yourselves, and by the time you woke up, that's what I was trying to say, you've found yourself literally prisoners. And I said, the Muzungu guy was saying that he's lectured and he's taught and he's met groups of young people, and quite clearly he finds them amazingly empty. Now, not all you young guys, but this in relative terms. And I've told this program that as part of my concerns, if this is what's happening in Uganda, there is what's happening in Rwanda, and they're not the same. And if this is what's happening in Uganda, there's what has happening in Kenya, it's not the same. As I said, when I was a young man of your age, shortly, just about your age, I think I was already in exile thanks to NRA. My brother was teaching in Kenya, and my brother was a primary school teacher, grade 3, but he was teaching in a secondary school in Kenya, but was amongst the best teachers in that school. That is what the Uganda that NRA has sunk. And basically that. So really, it's not only about the reading culture, it's also about quality, about academia. I was attending a debate the other day, and as a keynote speaker, and the majority of the attendant, the people, participants were young graduates, indeed some of them young university students. And during the question and answer sessions, you can actually see where people are. And it worries me. Now, it worries me that these are the quality of young Ugandans we've got. And that this is the quality of young leaders we've got.
Exactly.
And if then this is the young leaders we've got, these are the young leaders who follow you because they're immediately close to your age group. And you're the guys to follow us. And if you are the guys to take over from some of us, and then it is this role. My worry is that the Uganda that we take over from Museveni is going to be very challenged Uganda. And the challenged Uganda post Museveni, however much the few Ochienos do, I'm not quite sure whether we will be able to do it as well and as successfully as you would desire yourselves, unless you yourselves are sufficiently equipped to relate the Uganda that you found relative to the Uganda of Kenya and the Uganda of Rwanda, the Uganda of South Africa, and particularly the global Uganda of today, in which technology, innovation, industry, speed, pace, discipline, authenticity is at the helm, is at the helm and driving it. A Uganda in which you still have to go to a top national hotel for a meeting at 9 o'clock and you still arrive late. Forget about traffic. It's just a cultural thing. A Uganda in which you have a small study group and there are 10 of you, and part of the discipline is that Mr. Ochieno gives you literature to read, and out of the 10 of you, only 1 or 2 do the reading after 1 week. And if the reading is something that would take a discipline 45 minutes, my 8-year-old daughter will do it with mass fun in the evening and come and report to you, Baba, I have actually read it, and tells what it is. You know, there's a problem.
You get, and that's a very big challenge when you talk about reading, this culture. And I don't know how you get wisdom when you don't read, really, and knowledge. It always comes from there in. This particular last week, we've been seeing the National Unity Platform. I'm entering into the conversation of today, the importance, and I want to build it from the launching of those headquarters by the National Unity Platform. And of course, the keynote speech was given by retired Colonel Dr. Kiza Besigye. And soon after that, we also had a UID meeting, and of course, different young Democrats, members of the UID, came together to forge means of really uniting and removing the issue of an individual or individualism in politics. Things we call icons, people who are leading. Okay, leading can be there, but people who bring the power, the electricity from the people. So the question is, before we even delve into this conversation, is unity something that we can achieve as Uganda? Of the unity of the opposition forces?
I am optimistic. But when you confine me to unity of opposition, you make it tricky.
Okay.
If you're talking about unity in principle, of course, yes, we can. And there's no reason why not. And by the way, there has ever been a unity against Uganda People's Congress when different kind of alternative forces thought it was in their interest, that they thought UPC was their national problem, and particularly UPC as presented as UPC of Acholi of the Northern East. People came together so purposefully. So if people came together against the Uganda People's Congress, which is a nationalist political party, but DP, others, and other identity interests came in to rally against UPC, there's no reason why people don't do that. And imagine rallying against UPC, which is the best brand in town, the best equipment in town.
That is subjective, but it's okay.
No, it's not. It's factual. It's factual because
someone's hero is another one's villain.
That if you're talking proverbs, if you're talking facts, what UPC delivered at independence and within about 10 years of fast, and within 12 years of 2 UPC administrations, NRA has failed to do it in 40 years. Whether you talk about health, you talk about education, talk about infrastructure, talk about industry, and by the way, when you talk about national unity. Last week, shame to this NRA, it's almost a criminal thing, where NRA's big indictment was one that presents Western Uganda as taking 47%, nearly 50% of the top CEO positions in this country. That when you talk unity, that when you talk diversity, that's when you talk of national cohesion, that when you talk of patriotism, then you talk about NRA theft and criminality. Not under Uganda People's Congress, where we had the most diverse first cabinet, the most diverse and progressive civil service, the most diverse in terms of opportunities granted for academic institutions and schools and hospitals, the most, if you like, comprehensive delivery in economic programs that were delivered and performed on the basis of need and national strategy rather than privilege of communities. There was even this thing that the NRS used to laugh and make fun of Obote, that he's a kokoro, the road to a kokoro was never tarmacked because Obote did not prioritize tarmacking a kokoro road. Obote prioritized tarmacking the main roads in the country that mattered the most economical on the basis of need. And perhaps, even if a kokoro was one of them, he wanted to lead by example to show that, well, a sensible father actually has the last bone of the meat, like a sensible mother possibly would rather just do with the soup from the core pot, so long as the children do actually share in the meal because they are the future. That's the exemplar thing. So no.
Where does this come from? Before you finish, where does this narrative of Obote was tribalistic? Where does it come from?
It comes from Museveni and all his NRA bandits who led him.
There is no root to it, really?
Absolutely nonsense. Absolutely nothing. If it was not Obote and Obote's programs, Museveni would never have been known beyond Barara. If it was not because of Obote and his programs, particularly academic, in terms of fairness and equity, on the basis of this, Museveni would never have gone to entire school because he couldn't afford. If it was not like that, Museveni and his parents, I don't know who his parents are or where, and I don't know what wealth of money they had. I actually didn't even know their professional capacities. I don't know which bank accounts they actually did have. But Museveni's parents were absolutely incapable of flying Museveni to Dar es Salaam. The Ugandan state, the UPC state, with the national monies that we gathered on behalf of all the citizens of this country, so that you, the younger generation who might post that, would be able to do it. So Museveni was able to go to Dar es Salaam on merit and travel to Dar es Salaam to and fro and come back. And after that, if it was not the UPC government, Museveni would not have been a civil servant in president's office. Nobody knew the man. Nobody knew boy little Museveni after Dar es Salaam. But Museveni found a job in president's office.
Yes, that is
thanks to Wilson Okwenji, not Milton Obote. Thanks to Wilson Okwenji. Okwenji is not an Ochieno like me. Okwenji is a Musamia, a Muntu from Samia. And so he was head of research in Obote's office. So it was being done on the basis of merit. Museveni had graduated and he was looking for a job and they were recruiting public servants. That is UPC's track record. How? The likes of the Little Mutabiles and Little, all these other people. Who? You know, Obote's team in the 60s, who is the favorite boys around him? They're not Langese. Certainly they're not Lango. Obote too, administration. Who are his favorite ministers? You know? His favorite his favorite minister was the guys, the loudest ministers in cabinet was Chris Rakasisi and Munyankole and Dr. John Lowell Zakirunda Emusoga. Those are the loudest ministers. Yeah? Which Malango? There are Lango ministers down there. But who were the
Even
most
Samamturo had a position in
yes, there was, Samamturo was a DC,
Samamturo.
district commissioner. But I'm talking about
The
influence
core
at
big
core and the loudest guys. They're not Lango. They're not from Lango.
Yeah.
No, were they necessarily from Lango or Acholi? In fact, without prejudice, the more power from Teso was Peter Tai. And number two, number one, neither here nor there, but the most influential ministers and the largest number of cabinet came from Uganda. You lead by example. These are cultural things. These are deliberate leadership things. These are the things Ochieno is doing. These are the things that bring me into this program. These are the things that bring me here to tell you that it's actually possible these things to happen. That no, I do not have to relate with you on a commonality of identity, but rather a commonality of interest. And that our interest can be about Uganda, our interest can be about ideology. And for me, who's somebody center-left, who's persuading younger people like you that the future of this world is moderate, progressive, center-left polity, which is represented by Uganda People's Congress. So you don't join Uganda People's Congress because you want an Ochieno or Obote's party. You join Uganda People's Congress because it espouses the values which are consistent with the global left movement that will pick from Lula's Brazil, take it to ANC, South Africa, take it to Congress of India, bring it to Uganda People's Congress, based on our track record. And you see, when we pushed by ideology, we put health. When we pushed by ideology, we push education. When we push by ideology, we push research. When we push by ideology, we put communication, transport, communication. When we push by ideology, we bring national cohesion. When we push by ideology, we push by fairness and equity. And when we push by ideology, we say we're going to liberate Southern Africa, and we do. We do it not for ourselves, like the NRA guys do it for commanders and generals who go to steal money and land from Acholi because they now have too much dubious leader. But no, we do it for people. That's the difference.
Okay, that is Mr. Ochieno Joseph from the Uganda People's Congress. That is UPC, one of those old political parties that have been in this country for a while now. Mr. Ochieno, you paint something good, and you've brought in the aspect of UPC. With such a situation such as this one, where you've had a leader that some of you may dub not that good, for more than 37 years, someone who...
It's a long time.
That's a very long time.
Yeah.
So how do you, and when I'm looking at these 37 years, this person has the power of the state, power of incumbency, he has the resources, everything. And we're still ringing this bell and this song of political parties, UPC, NUP, FDC, PPP. Is this really what you should be concerned about? Do you think political parties are necessary today in this atmosphere, this political environment of today? Are those political parties relevant, really?
It's very much interesting you say that, because we are in this situation simply because political parties were killed. We're in this situation, as I told you, because DP and others rallied around enemies of political pluralism, including Museveni, who's anti-democracy, a counter-revolutionary.
Anti-democracy?
Yes, to kill UPC.
That's some of his fundamental values.
Indeed. No, of course, yes. And to kill UPC as a political party. And because they killed UPC, and then they brought a monolithic, so-called no-party, quote, democracy, which is a nonsense, you know. Political parties were killed, political values were killed, democratic values were killed, personal merit was sold. Me, myself, and I were sold. Hence the coming of me, myself, and I, and money, and power, and the struggle for me. And that's the thing. So by the time the lone UPC had fought for nearly 20 years, granted joined by DP, so like 10 years later, to push for political pluralism, and say by the time we won the rights to return to multipartyism with the defeating of Article 269 of the NRA then Constitution in 2004, 2005, and political parties returned. In UPC's case, we're already substantially weakened. It's now 20 years. 20 years when your leaders have been killed, deliberately targeted and killed. 20 years when most of your leaders have been humiliated and sunk, taken out of jobs, public service jobs and everything else. 20 years when your leaders have been pushed to exile. 20 years when your leaders have been humiliated. 20 years when your leaders have been humiliated, including their families and children, and they're being called killers, and their children like Roger I love my daddy, but Kumbe is a killer who records. 20 years of this NRA propaganda, backed by DP and everything else, backed by the Western world, particularly Britain and America and everything else. So everything else that was bad about this country was UPC.
Affiliated to UPC.
It was not surprising then that it had been so substantial weakened that even some of our children, some of our friends and relatives didn't even want to associate with the political party.
That's true.
Fast forward when then the parties returned UPC and it was now weak. DP regained itself but weak. But DP, in DP's case, they went into formal marriage with the NRA, so-called alliance or whatever it's called, with Museveni. There is a video that doing its round in which Semogere is swearing in as minister.
Yes.
And in that clip, once Semogere finished swearing, Museveni literally laughs.
Yeah, I think that was his win in that.
Quite unusual, because Museveni is a very interestingly calm personality, you know. But that's quite unusual. He found it very cheeky, this one here. That's very important. No, take note from me.
Yes, sir.
That video tells a lot. So from then, it was a decisive thing that Museveni said, I got it. So they got DP. Likewise, by the time Semogere was waking up in 1995, 96, most of DP had remained with the NRA.
Yeah.
You know, the Kazibes of this world, the Kazibes, the Sibambis, the Kadagas, the former vice presidents, both of them, Bukenya, and then the other, the more recent one, who was a presidential assistant, like, you know, the former speaker, Sekandi. All the top DP guys were now NRA, so DP had remained blunt. So the Norbert Maus were the young boys and girls who were now trying to pick up the pieces in DP, maybe just also to train themselves and make themselves relevant. So DP, the political parties, the traditional political parties had been that weakened. Come the likes of FDCs, whatever they merged, without going into too much details, they were weak, they knew, but if anything, some of them were part of NRA.
Yeah, most of them.
And many of them were now coming, not because they were constituting the traditional values of what political parties should be, but rather we are just separating from Museveni, so it's time for him to go. So basically, we want change rather than we represent
something different. A new ideology, precisely. A new idea. It was just counter-reactive.
Precisely, and that's what happened. So political parties. Fast forward, then what happens? And FDC breaks up, and some of the leaders, like my good brother Mugisha Muntu, forms his own political party, and then you move on, and then PPP. Bidan Desali, former NRA Secretary General of UPM. Part of the thing was the thought was, you know, they're going somewhere. In fact, of all those people, Bidan Desali was possibly genuinely left at the time, and Uganda nationalists had left. But I think once they rolled themselves in the bush, he was confused. And then to the end, you could say that possibly, realizing what it is, and this is where they are, nothing else. Fast forward, who else? I'm just taking the big ones, then come recently. This crumble when people begin to question messages, some people begin to get tired with them, then some people take the propaganda from NRA, the guys failed, is a permanent opposition, is whatever. So particularly young guys begin to question because you want success.
Exactly.
Then things, messages, shine begins to fade off. And then what do we do as an opposition? Let's come together. I'm answering you in a particular way.
Yes, sir.
Then movements, people begin to come, let's mobilize ourselves. The mobilization around people power comes in. People begin to go there across the political divide.
Exactly.
And the issue then was not about their ideological leanings, but rather the principal thing is that, well, let's come together collectively to push away a common enemy. It happens that somehow some people believe that Chagulanyi was very good because a well-known musician, but let him be a mobilization tool rather than a leader. The political leader.
Should be a kingmaker.
Came the parliamentary seat in which he stands as an independent, the discussion whether or not he should and he should not, and what are the issues. Then after that, the idea to turn the thing into a political party comes. And once these guys constitute themselves to a political party, some of the other people who were there for the people power rather than a political party begin to question themselves. Granted, people power, I mean, NUP as a political party gained sufficient traction to give NRA nearly bloody nose, but definitely bloody nose in Buganda. But
You don't believe that they gave Museveni a bloody nose all over the country? Because that's what they said.
that's how I framed it. That they definitely gave Museveni a bloody nose in Buganda. Nearly bloody nose across the country, because that's now debatable.
Okay.
But whatever happens, a number of people did not join in because the thing became a political party. And for me, I'm a convictionist around the political party because my party is UPC. I don't follow crowds, and I don't follow numbers. I follow issues. But in principle, I supported the idea of people power. I released some of my young people, both at home and abroad, to see people power to engage in the process. But once the people power then becomes a political party, it's not my political party, because my political party is Uganda People's Congress. And once people power then becomes, not that's because that's people argue that. If then out of people power there's NUP, I question what is NUP? What does it represent? What are their values versus my own? Who are the leaders and what do they represent? And I see those in the image of my leaders, the image of my own self, and
does it fit in?
Then you see these issues.
Yes,
so
yes.
hence those are the things around political parties and their structural weakness. Now, say I say it as it may, where do you start from now? You see, I've given you a trajectory of where you started as of July 25th, July 1985, for argument's sake. If you like, to the formation of NUP up to and including 2021's NRA's election charade, which was an election charade, in fact. Extraordinary that over 50 Ugandans died in that election thing. And that is what brought an official end to anything NRA can talk about security and democracy and security for the people of Uganda. And the Museveni who was playing in those videos claiming Obote killed Uganda, was killing Uganda, that Museveni could not identify one Ugandan. There is not a single, I'm not talking about you, for you're not there. There is no single Ugandan, Mr. Museveni can trace that one Obote killed, that one Obote ordered to kill, that one died as a result of Obote's directive. There's none. Absolutely none. Absolutely none. You can check with your lawyers before you make further inquiries.
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yeah, I get
So
what you're
anyway,
saying. So what were these UPC youth
so-
wingers
so-
doing?
so that's
Were
it.
they at the direction of Mr. Obote?
youth wingers.
UPC youth wingers.
Youth wingers are political activists.
Yeah, but
I've got a number of youth wingers here. If you buy propaganda, it's up to you. Ask who they were and where they were. Youth wingers are young intellectuals in UPC. And by the current youth activists of Uganda People's Congress around me are the future of this country.
I'm talking about
you
those,
better,
the ones
I'm
of
answering
then,
you. You
in
better
the
be
80s.
no. You better be part of them. The youth of today are around myself, and around some of my colleagues. I'm sure there's some others elsewhere. Are the future. The Ugandan UPC youth are young people who are trained to think, trained into critical thinking, trained as leaders, detoxed emotionally, nationalism embedded into them, ideological values pushed, context of global polity put into them, selflessness taught,
So they are perfect.
drive for national. They're decent. They're certainly the best that you'll find in this country. Start from independence today with evidence. Yeah, ask even NRA's Rugunda, they'll tell you that. So these are the things. So that's what I know about UPC youth wing. Anything else, the nonsense that Museveni is, and include some people in DP say without evidence, go and ask them.
Okay.
Go and ask them.
I get what you're saying. Let's get back to the discussion of, okay, you've painted a very good picture of where we come from, but I want you to just explain to the viewer out there, how can this particular, how can they use the political parties today in the dynamics of today, really, how can they be more impactful?
That's where I was trying to...
Let me just finish. As you've said, you mentioned something that was important, that when it became an NUP as a political party, some of the Ochienos who are UPC-led and believe in the ideology of UPC seized from that pressure group that had metamorphosed different fighting people. So how best can we use these political parties today to fight for the problems we have today? And just to paint for you a picture, we're talking about, for example, NUP was launching its headquarters,
yes.
And you saw the drama that was happening. And this is just a launch of a headquarter. Imagine if NUP wanted to really take power. So this is the environment I'm talking about realistically. Are these political parties, the UPCs, the NUPs, the caravans that are going to try to drive change in this country?
First of all, congratulations to NUP. It's exciting to see some of these things happen. It's exciting because I know that many of them are motivated by our foundations and roots and the examples that we set as Uganda People's Congress with our Uganda House that Museveni shed tears over every day, but he doesn't know what to do about it.
Yes,
and so, but instead of learning from it in a constructive way, because that's what leadership is all about.
Yes, sir.
So, that's a congratulations to them. So I was saying that. So that's what happened. So meaning, the nearest to a possible political cohesion could easily have emerged out of people power.
Yes.
Did not, and did not for the reasons that I've given.
Yes.
Some of the other reasons are there. We can possibly be bold about it. People then begin to be much more critical about the personalities involved. People begin to become much more investigative about the values held. People begin to look back around the securities and the securities. People begin to look about to see whether or not they can guarantee their presence in some of those spaces. So that happened. So where we are at the moment, we need to go back to where at least we were before NRA.
Okay.
And to do that, we would need to say what I think I've told your program when we're having a conversation about the state of issues in FDC. And I suggested at that time that this country needs more leaders, not more political parties.
Okay.
Yeah. So we don't need more political parties in this country. We need less. We just need more leaders to emerge from across the political divide. And there I am suggesting that the political parties are already too many. Even if you start with NRA, even if it is a political party, it's not. But it's the rules like, claims it's a political party. Then you follow NUP, you follow with FDC, then you follow with UPC, then you follow with DP only. Yeah? Those are 5. But if you say like that, my brother Gregory Mugisha Muntu would be very annoyed that he didn't mention these political organizations in ANT, as national relevant. Those guys, they can easily argue that they should be a number before UPC. Can you imagine?
Yeah,
but but you don't
I can also maybe say the same.
You could say that. That would be very courageous of you, because I don't think you would justify that in any reasonable academic exercise. But look, so those are 6 political organizations.
Yes, sir.
Even if you reduce them to 4, there will still be too many. And the reason for these purposes, but even then you reduce them to 5 and put away NRA as 5 opposition political organizations. Political parties are usually organizations that should emerge around grievances and do very specific core interests. It's out of those and the combination of that will possibly emerge a leaning that you'd say an ideological rooting of a sort, that this is what they represent. And politics is really, and young guys here need to gain some interest to say that politics is really normally about played around the left versus the right. And so politics of the left, politics of the right, and politics will be around the center, center left, center right. Meaning these things about conservatives versus socialism or liberalism, things. Those are isms.
But here we have a question of someone people call a dictator for more than 30 years. Do you think we have time for leftists, rightists? I thought the uniting factor would be the ousting of Mr. Museveni.
No, we do, and I'm explaining why.
Okay.
Because Museveni came in claiming he was to the left. In fact, he even accused Bote and UPC of being not left-wing enough. Then Museveni came and sold everything the left built for the people. And you cannot be a leftist and then you sell off everything that belongs to the country and you give it to imperialist forces and you give them to excess capitalism. You can't. And so my point here is that, so if it's from that point of view, traditional democracies, because there are democracies in Britain, in America, in France, in Germany, they mainly 2 to 3 political parties competing for power. 2 likely winners for elections. Possibly 3, but mainly usually 2. And that's sort of how it swings. Now, we need to be able to go there. We were there. We've sort of messed up here. Now, my point is now, if that's the case, then you see how difficult it is for 6 different competing interests. None of whose ideology I know, except UPC. Because I don't know NUP's ideology. I don't know ANT's ideology. I don't know FDC's ideology. With respect, I genuinely have an idea about DP, maybe to the right ideology, and I stop there. So then, bringing us together about common issues is not very easy, particularly considering our recent past. However, you're right that nothing stops us saying that the most common agenda is getting rid of Mr. Museveni, getting rid of dictatorship. We did fight with the DP towards the end of the ban on political parties, and we successfully, DP and we and UPC worked together to that effect. Right now, what is lacking is what I started at the beginning, so I've left the party issues there and come to the question of leadership. The difficulty is, in order to bore you, not to bore your audience, is simply that we lack leadership. We lack men and women in these political parties and organizations who are committed visionaries enough to say this is what we need to do to reclaim our country. And one of the things that we need to do to reclaim our country is to mobilize and galvanize a critical mass of Ugandans against an oppressive dictatorship, which might seem to have a majority in the National Assembly, but in terms of public opinion, they don't have the majority unless they're using suppressive state media. How can you pool our limited resources together? After all, they're using state resources in order to be able to wake up the people. That is what we need. At the moment, I don't know. In the likely event that I'm elected president, meaning confirmed president of Uganda People's Congress, I've been promising this for the last 2 years, that I will work very hard and I will give it my priority to rally around the other leaders of political organizations to, amongst other things, while they're rebuilding their political organizations. And UPC's job to rebuild is big. Rebuilding ourselves, reuniting ourselves, mobilizing our youth tables, women tables, organization, structural work on the grassroots. But side by side with that, critically, urgently, would be to work with the leaders of other political organizations to make sure that we coalesce around the most urgent agenda. And if that urgent agenda includes seeking to change, to give Ugandans a fresh start, NRA should not worry. I will be seeking to make sure that we have a fresh start in Uganda in which people who are NRA voters, including some of the NRA politicians and legislators today, I want to help them to come to the terms with the fact that 40 years of a monolithic regime is too much, too long, to help them to understand that NRA has been a national disaster, to help them to know that NRA has killed institutions and hope and the future of this country, and that if they're nationalists enough, and I know most of them are, except that they may be lost, they need to be working together with us so that we're able to pull together so that the common agenda is Uganda rather than defense of NRA.
Okay. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, before we go to the break, I just want you to answer this question because many have asked it before. That was UPC defeated in your perspective militarily, totally? Because some people have that idea that UPC cannot come back after that bloody nose that was given to them by the NRA.
We've never had a bloody nose from anywhere, whether politically.
They are the victors of the war.
No, you asked me a question, and you know that, and I'll give you an answer.
Yes, sir.
We've never had a bloody nose militarily, and we've never had a bloody nose politically. And I can tell you that, and this official public staff, and I've said it to Museveni, he knows one of the things that's why the reason why maybe he's locally these days, he wants to thank God, although sometimes he thanks God on the one hand, but he annoys God by doing crude things to God's people. No, we chose as Uganda People's Congress not to fight Museveni militarily. We chose that we did not want any more Ugandans to die anymore. And so, because any fight would be one that involves predominant loss of lives of our people, and in many cases, possibly in many cases, actually innocent people. But whatever the case, we do not believe that anymore that we wanted things that would involve shedding of blood. That's the only reason why Museveni is in power. Up to the time when Museveni chased me into exile in 1987, up to the early 90s, had I and people of my generation, with the leadership of Milton Obote, who was alive then in the heading our organization in London, rather in from Lusaka, had we chose to fight Museveni as UPC militarily and organize UPC structures, both political and military wing in this country, Museveni knows, take it to the bank, Museveni would not be in power. We would have got rid of the guy. We are too strong, too organized, too structured, too disciplined. We would have done it a long time ago. Ochieno would possibly be dead, but definitely would be a general. Just think about it. So no, we chose that we want to become political generals rather than anything else. Okay. So as far as then, to conclude, we won 1962 elections. We were overthrown by Idi Amin. Amin overthrew us militarily, and it was a military coup pushed by Israel, backed by America and Britain. So Ugandans, instead of talking about UPC, they should cry about their government that was grabbed using Amin. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I get it.
In 1985, we were overthrown. But in 1980, we had convincingly defeated DP and Museveni in 1980. Evidence, no evidence, go down there, we won it convincingly. In 1985, we were going to win more overwhelming majority. In 1985, December, had elections take place. We overthrown using the Okelos, not by the Okelos, using the Okelos. DP, NRA, a section of the religious establishment in this country and a certain identity combined with 3 key UPC people, individuals, came together, used the army to overthrow our government. That's what a blood knows. Okay. Museveni had already been defeated in Luweru, and Museveni likes to say, no, they didn't. By 1985 July, a number of NRA people had surrendered to the UN, where in Congo and many other places. Yes, so we've never been defeated militarily. Okay. If anything, we've helped Museveni to calm down the Konyis and end the war in northern Uganda. That's a credit that's never given to Obote, never given to myself, never given to some of the UPC leaders. I know people through Mao, we went to no. Do you get it?
Yeah, I get it.
So
we're
fine guys.
Thank you so much, Joseph Ochieno. Joseph Ochieno paints a very beautiful picture of the Uganda People's Congress, UPC. So ladies and gentlemen, we are done with the first hour of the show. When we come back, we're going to be looking at the tribal divisions in this country. I was in Gulu district, and it's so unfortunate, and I'm not attacking anybody. I went to buy airtime from a certain lady, and this lady refused to sell me airtime just because of where I come from, and she had the narrative of, you people, I cannot sell airtime to you people. And it was small as airtime. And I'm looking at this as, how do we forge unity? Yet we already have divisions in the country. You have people who are saying those people, and it's 2023, you may think these things are already dead and buried, but there is a divisionism in this country. How do we go about that particular issue? Shall be also talking about maybe the Balalo question when you get more time. But continue sending those messages, send them through the Alternative Uganda social media platforms, that is on Facebook, Twitter, and all others. Or you can just, directly send a message on those particular pages. We'll be able to read your messages as we continue with this particular program. My name is Edgar Matthew Karuhanga. This is the Hotline. I'm sitting in for Rogers Turiahawe. Let's go for a short commercial break. We'll be right back.
Seriously.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Go to the church, though.
Tawali man, what's up?
Man, can you imagine people just dump everywhere? Someone drinks water and throws the bottle wherever.
Come on, Rogers. What else do you expect people to do with an empty bottle?
Simanya now, recorder. Did you know that plastics take at least 450 years to decompose?
What? That's a long time.
Exactly. Because plastics are made out of a lightweight and flexible material that doesn't decompose easily. And plastics everywhere in the environment cause plastic pollution.
What is plastic pollution now?
It is the accumulation of plastic waste in the environment, like bottles, polythene bags, straws. All of these contribute to plastic pollution.
I have been using them without knowing their effect.
Yeah, a lot of people have. Plastics are a danger to the ecosystem, both on land and in water.
So how can we overcome this problem? Is there something we can do?
Oh yes, we can reduce by minimizing the use of plastics, reuse by repurposing them, or recycle by collecting and processing them into new products.
Everyone wants to change the world, but no one wants to change themselves for the world.
How about we change our habits for the world?
And it starts with me and you.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digitalk.
Are you craving for that special meal that will entice your taste buds and leave you with lasting, thrilling memories? Look no further. Spice Island Bulenga has got your answer. Natural, fresh and delicious juice, the best meals. Don't miss our daily specials from Monday to Sunday. Pizza Wednesday, Saturday Pizza Bonanza, you buy one and take two. Come dine with us and feel the experience. We are located at Prime Shopping Center in Bulenga, Mitiana Road. For inquiries, call us on 0704111720. Spice Island, we treat your cravings.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Welcome back from that short commercial break, ladies and gentlemen. It's just 1 minute past 8 p.m. This is our last hour of this particular show, and of course I'm still with Mr. Ochieno Joseph from UPC, and of course we were supposed to have Mr. Gideon, but he's unable to make it, so he sends his apologies. He's unfortunately caught up. He won't be able to make it, but we shall be finishing up this hour with Mr. Ochieno Joseph. We've been talking about a lot of insights, and of course the main topic of discussion today is of course how do we foster a unity among opposition forces to find better governance of Uganda, and of course to build a better Uganda. You can still send in some of your messages. I'll be reading them as we continue. And before we went for a short commercial break, we had started the tribal question in this country, where we have people antagonistic. We live together, but there is a divisionism in this country, and we're here talking about uniting forces for a better Uganda. How do we address the tribal question or those tribal tension between some tribes in this country or some regions or some people? How do we go about it, Mr. Chair?
I'm very sorry about the experience you had in Gulu. I'm actually quite shocked, but possibly not surprised that is happening now. Considering what happened to Acholi people, and considering how NRA targeted the Acholi people in Luweero from 1981, Acholi and Lang in particular, but people from the north really, in Luweero, and considering what NRA did, particularly to the Acholi and Lang, then later Teso and Maibokedi, there would be nobody from the north or east, certainly not the lower community, who would be supporting NRA. You know,
Yes.
but you know, these are very forgiving people. And if you consider the war of what Balalo would call war of genocide, subjected to Acholi by NRA, people like Salim Saleh would not be using Gulu as their base. But I think one of the things that has happened is that NRA has taken the north and east very much for granted. In fact, we've continuously given Museveni and NRA a blank check. And then when it comes now specifically to Acholi, on your experience, is the fact that President Museveni now begins to underestimate things. He's killed the spirit of the people. We can now use them and his equipment to pacify themselves and pacify us. And let's go and chop off their land. And we've chopped up their humanity. And with the Balalo question, and there is clear resentment, and I think Museveni has sort of nearly crossed the line as far as Acholi and the north and east, but particularly the Acholi when it comes to the intercourse of the land, because part of the dispute is that people in Acholi feel that Museveni has not done well or enough to help resolve, if anything, is fund the conflict between Acholi and Madi people, again over land and territory. So talk national disunity delivered by Mr. Museveni in order for him to rule. If you see how NRA came, before NRA went to the bush, Museveni had built, as way back as Tanzania, almost 1979 thing, the narrative that the north and east had ruled too long and controlled, and all the problems Uganda was facing was because of Obote, Amino, people, these guys who've ruled Uganda before. And so we the Bantu is our time. When it comes to we the Bantu is our time, then we the Bantu, and you know, I am the one with the army. So you can't manage those guys unless you've got an army, because particularly they're very strong militarily, and the strongest of them militarily, and the ruthless ones, the very bad behaved ones, ugly looking bad ones, those Mucholi ones, you know, from Gulu. You know. No, these are narratives which were built and they're talked about.
Yes,
and as a young Ugandan, I know I experienced these things. When Museveni went to the bush, the predominant number of the UNLA guys were Acholi, and the UNLA was nearly painted almost as an Acholi bad army by Museveni, who was UNLA himself. You know, you didn't know Museveni was UNLA?
Yes, as they're fighting Amin.
UNLA, whatever the bad.
And I think he commanded the UNLA forces that took, 1979, took Amin.
No, he was one of the, for him he was recruiting. He went via Mbarara to recruit a young Banyankole, by Hima, by Giga, those kind of circles, to build his new army, NRA. Rather than to come to Kampala. Then he went like that to Toro. That's what Museveni did.
Okay.
So the guys who came to Kampala were the Yitu Jok and the Tito Kelo and the others, the Mwangas and the Tanzanian People's Defense Forces.
Okay.
Good enough, the guys who came to Kampala were reasonably representative. So don't you worry, it had Banyankole and Bachiga and everybody else, you know, except Mukende Museveni's thing was his own project. But granted, it was part of the liberation struggles, and he came and became Minister of Defense for that matter. Post Luweru, I was personally nearly lynched in Mandege in 1986, late 86 actually, 86, 87. Because you would just go and in Kampala and there's Wuno Mucholi. You know, in this Kampala is happened, and I was a student at Makerere University, that's correct. So the idea was that Northerners were, you framed as, you look like a suspect either in the military or something like that. And then people lynched you. They will get us stories of people. People were killed simply because crowds. Uno Mucholi, and Mucholi could mean people come for you. Whether you Mucholi because you've stolen, you because you're a former soldier, you're Mucholi because you're what kind of stuff. Those things happened under NRA. Okay.
Some people have mentioned the Mukura incident.
Mukura
it is like the same.
Mukura was much more organized. Mukura was 1989, where 100 people were basically literally banded into a rail wagon and
But
settle.
you summarize the story, because there are stories that they had to first check, screen, and then some people from the same village screen them, then screen again, and things like that for a certain group of persons.
Mugisha Muntu was the army commander, so maybe next time you host me, you should ask him that question. And basically, he was definitely an active serving officer, and these are all guys in opposition. I'm saying so in a good way, because these are now my colleagues, our colleagues who can genuinely give you an objective response.
Exactly.
You know, and I'm not saying it for bad, but really because of Mr. Museveni. So this sort of the contextual background about these things. And so the Acholi, Lango, Teso, Jobs, Western, people have suffered. Now, if you push back from your question, if I get you very right,
Yes, sir.
I think that the future of this country lies in the re-emergence of political leaders who are able to put on the table a genuine, open conversation. I've always sought a National Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the National Conference, to have this conversation, so that we have all leaders and all political parties and organizations come on the table, so that we have a national conversation about Mukura massacre, Atiak massacre, the manner and circumstance under which for 16 years actually people predominantly and part of Lango were in concentration camps, where children were born in camps and they went on to give birth in camps in Acholi. You know, and now all of a sudden there are Balalo, some of whom allegedly came from Tanzania, others allegedly from Congo. Some people were asking, oh, there was Balalo in Congo, those mountainous places. And now they came to Bunyoro, Toro, and they found themselves in Acholi, and they're buying land and they're armed. Yeah?
Yeah, we're coming there.
These are national identity questions. So you do that, you know, people are bound to ask questions. I don't know whether it was part of an organized early conversation with you, or was it during break? You know, what administrations, these things didn't apply. They did not apply. I'll tell you how conscious Obote was, although slightly irrelevant, not relevant to direct relevance. He told me that, look, for the 2 times he was president, no member of his close family was allowed to have a foreign bank account.
You've mentioned that before.
Yes. But I repeat it not in terms of the question of corruption, but it's about very much delineating your family from the privilege of the state and assumptions and being an exemplary leader. So, the Uganda post-NRA, which I hope then will be a Uganda led by UPC or UPC values and by people like yourselves, will be a Uganda that if you want trying to build a national cohesion, you'll invest in education, reinvest in education to ensure that public institutions in this country, public schools in this country, public government schools, there's no the word aided, it's a very terrible word. Government schools, you know, equipped, stocked, staffed, large enough available with the capacity to absorb a critical number of young people in Kotido, in Kidepo, yeah, in Moyo, in Ajumani, in Rukunjiri, in Rushoroza, in Chinoni, in Nagongera, in Busebete, and in Buikwe. That these institutions absorb sufficient to capacity. It means, therefore, that children from across this country have a foundational start with relatively similar possibilities.
Oh, okay.
Do you get it?
Equitable, really. An equitable.
And part of what then happens is a child from Mbuikwe can say, we are told that Kidepo Secondary School, where one dormitory is called Ochieno Hall, yeah, overlooks the park. And when you're on the hill, you can actually see giraffe. So not only am I, mommy, going to want to go to study in Kidepo, but Kidepo also offers agriculture. And beyond agriculture, Kidepo is excellent when it comes to literature. So the child leaves Kidepo or Rukunjiri and goes to Kidepo. And they travel on Uganda transport bus, the one that UPC ever had in this country,
Yeah.
you know, to Kampala. They bought a fast train, that is before, in case by then we will not have access to the train services to Rukunjiri, and it goes into fast train to Tororo, connects to Moroto, and takes a bus to Kidepo.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes. I get
That is the Uganda then that becomes an integral. So in Kidepo, that child, when they go to hunt for mangoes on Saturdays, they're talking to Karamojong families. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I get you.
And they speak the language. And her best friend is a Karamojong girl. She may even end up dating her brother, who is a medical student in Abim, medical school. Yeah?
I get you.
That is the Uganda that we had, that UPC gave to you guys, which you opted to instead to abuse, and sometimes this serves you guys right. We told you. But no.
You are laughing last.
So on a serious
things we
note,
talked about
that
are
sort of
here.
is the thing. But also then to do that equitable thing is that therefore then we also invest in health facilities and health services which are equitable, and that does not have to compel your auntie to seek to carry a packet of malaria drugs in her apron to go take home, because there are malaria drugs in every hospital and health facilities. And if it's UPC's government led by Ochieno, there will be regulations, there will be regulations, like I know in the certain established countries. In Britain, there are certain average drugs, you do not get antibiotics over the counter. Mere antibiotics, you cannot go to any private pharmacy and buy antibiotics. It has to be prescribed by a medic, meaning by a doctor. And so maybe those things, the nurse will be wasting time because nobody's going to buy from her. Because they do so, then you know that well. The police may be on the door, or you may lose your practice certificate.
Yes, sir.
But in so doing, you're creating equitable, also economic possibilities, because in Roger's case, who presents a program here and earns 1.8 million Uganda shillings, his net pay after paying net income after paying everything else, including his rent and transportation, is 900,000 shillings. His job is to save 90% of that, and not to bother about part of that money going to medical services, because medical services has already been catered for, because he paid his 20% tax, and the 20% tax has gone to the national coffers, and the national coffers, meaning Minister of Finance has made sure that money that is supposed to go to health has gone. And of course, after all, the Minister of Finance will never ever be a Mabati minister under UPC administration. That's what I'm trying to say. You create political, economic, and social equity.
Yeah.
The political one means, as I said right now, my top aides are not necessarily Jap boys and girls. Okay?
Yes, I get you.
Right now, my top aides are not necessarily Jap boys and Jap girls. But this morning, I recruited a top grade Jap boy into my active UPC programs, and I trained them. They're absolutely at the core of all this, just like all other around the country. So in terms of my delegations, I delegate people on the basis of the circumstances of the situation and the merit of abilities and capacities, rather than whether or not they come from the east or north or western Uganda.
Mr. Chene, you paint a very beautiful picture, and I wish sometimes God should give you an opportunity to lead this country. You paint a beautiful picture, and yet in reality we are at our worst. We are at our worst,
Yes.
really. Where do we start exactly? Because these are very beautiful things on paper, but practically, where do we really start? When we have a country where every other day there are people pointing fingers, and this thing has not been there by the Mr. Ochieno. Maybe it was there and people were not talking about it. Now it's open. Those people, such people, you know them, you know where they stay. Those are the sentiments we're hearing from political players. Where do we really start from practically?
It can be done, and that's why the pictures I'm painting to you are not impossibilities. I'm telling you.
They sound hypothetical and possibilities.
No,
rather than action
no,
states.
I do not blame you, because at your stage, there was this conversation about no Ugandan who's below 40, understands any Uganda before Museveni. But I have to continuously labor to you that there was an extremely good Uganda before Museveni. And if there was an extremely good Uganda before Museveni, there must be an absolutely fantastic Uganda post-Museveni.
Okay.
There was an absolutely good Uganda before Museveni, including on security. The only thing that Museveni ran with for a long time was this thing on national security. But when I go around the other time, I got another young recruit from Lang, of all places. And the young girl lady, actually young nurse, was saying that, she was told that her mom is now an NRA activist, but concedes that she was UPC before. And the mom talks about how they trekked to go and spend time in a Kokoro when Owote died, all of them in raid. But anyway, meaning they're now NRA for survival. And said, the mom says security. I said, what insecurity was there in Lang before Museveni came in? What insecurity was there in Teso before Museveni came in? What insecurity was there in Iganga before Museveni came in Jinja? What insecurity actually was there in Chinoni? Actually, what insecurity was there in Barara before Museveni? What insecurity was there in Bushenyi before Museveni came in? Granted, now I know parts of Barara and parts of Bushenyi had people who were actively recruiting for Museveni and agents for Museveni without prejudice. I also now know that actually the government agents who were actively working and dealing and engaging with some of these people.
Yeah.
At that time.
At that
But
time.
what is security? What is security? So no, if you see what has happened under NRA from Kasese to Mukura that you refer to Atiak massacres, to the concentration camps in the north,
To the Kampala incident
to the
2020.
and then you come to the Kampala incident 2020. And then you see this thing which is happening to legislators. You see the attack on the judiciary. You see the attack on the National Assembly in Parliament. And you see what happened to Chagulanyi, the way the poor young boy was whisked off an aircraft. What insecurity? There has never been such a law. Granted, in the meantime, particular individuals disappeared. In the meantime, particular people were killed because people died. And people died in this country. Granted, in almost every administration. And whether two people will tell you that maybe some people, would have died in one way or another. In democracies, people die. But I'm saying the specificity of the incidents referred. Which leader of the Democratic Party or political opposition at any time since independence would have been subjected by the manner in which the leaders of opposition parties have been subjected to this? People go to Bote 1 and the members of parliament who were detained from cabinet. Yes, those were absolutely true, and they were ministers, and they went, and I'm told they lived 5-star life equivalent in Lozira. But you know what? Detained. But you know what? These guys were genuinely planning to overthrow the government. Try it on Museveni. Number 2, Benedicto Chiwanga was directly involved, and in a related way, in the assassination attempts of the life of the president, elected, Democrat-elected president. Facts. So you can't refer to those. Do you see what I'm saying?
I'm getting this.
1966, I think, let me qualify, because I know people always want to throw this. 1966, the Lubiri incident. It was not an attack. It was a government response to an incident. It was a fact, which over-escalated. That's a fact. So minus those ones, what else? So really, it's extraordinary. But so anyway, so because of that, I'm completely convinced that post-Museveni, we can have, and we should be able to have a better Uganda. especially now that we have much bigger and better technological advancement. Unfortunately, though, the disclaimer urgently, as I said at the beginning, the professor I met this afternoon, part of the conversation we were having was about the quality of education, quality of research, the skills level, you know, of the average young Ugandan, and this guy teaches. He's extremely concerned, and I'm very concerned. And as I said, one of the reasons, to answer your first question earlier, was one of the reasons why I'm on these platforms. I'm trying to ask young Ugandans to wake up. Wake up, seek, strive, and believe in better. Really, because this country deserves more and better, but more because actually your counterparts in neighboring Kenya and Rwanda, I keep on referring to those two, they're far apart, far ahead. And by the way, as a continent, you are really not on the top, minus Nyege Nyege. And finally, in the manner and pace at which the world is globalizing,
Yes, sir.
unless and until you young Ugandans up your games in terms of delivery, in terms of presentations, in terms of negotiations, in terms of research, in terms of innovations, in terms of discipline, whether it's about keeping time or focus or clarity or consistency, yes?
Yes, sir.
When it comes to global big things of tomorrow, you will find yourselves playing second fiddle. And I don't want my children and children's children to become the next generation of economic global slaves. Certainly not this Uganda, which was the Pearl of Africa, which at independence within about 8 years, we transformed to a revolutionary health provisions, to a revolutionary educational provision, where Makerere was the Harvard of Africa, where education in academic terms, Uganda's schools and institutions were destination of choice for the sub-region, where other countries came to benchmark in terms of some of our programs, where our innovations and initiatives around agriculture saw the cattle deals from the cattle corridor across the country and things like that, where we had a nearly national health service, which is one of my aspirations. And one of my aspirations is to see a public health service like that of Uganda, of United Kingdom, in which health services free, high quality and high quality and free at the point of delivery, but publicly funded via taxation and other national resources. And so you do that, you have a healthy population, guaranteed population, sufficiently educated, well living, and those are the competitive part of the world in which the future of this country, the young people of the Pearl of Africa, must strive. Anything short of that, we are basically just shooting ourselves in the foot simply because a bunch came from the Luweru bushes, claim they're Marxists. We don't know what they are today, but that's now really self-centered, personal, merit-driven, if you like, I don't want to call them capitalists, but really crude gatherers of accumulation of wealth. It's extraordinary.
Exactly, extraordinary. Ladies and gentlemen, we are still watching the Hotline Show. My name is Edgar Matthew Karahanga. I'm still with Mr. Joseph Ochieno from Uganda People's Congress. Yeah. Mr. Ochieno, I want us to delve into another conversation of the Balalo question. This has been in the mouths of Ugandans for a while now, and I'm speaking of it in a dark light because it feels certain individuals are discomforted, and with reason, because if you have someone who's coming on your land and this individual, it's okay, you may come and move, but you're moving with a gun, you're protecting your heart with a gun. So President Museveni recently came out and issued an order that all Balalos without fenced farms should leave as soon as possible. I think he gave them an ultimatum of like 3 weeks. Is this the way to go to address the Balalo question? And before we even delve into the way to go, how did we reach this point where a Ugandan moves to a new area? And of course, I'm allowed to move to any area, any part of this country.
You're welcome to come to Nagongera.
Yes, I should come to Nagongera sometime. That is in Tororo, right? So I'm allowed to be anywhere. But then these people are looked at with a certain scorn. Do you have any comment on that particular issue?
It's not a scone. Which one is your home district without prejudice?
Fort Portal.
Fort Portal.
Kabarole
You
district.
come from Kabarole.
Yes, sir.
Kabarole is the old district. That's a very old organized name. And Owoda had a fantastic rally there in 1980 in Kabarole.
Oh.
And actually it was in Kabarole that, leading towards elections, ask my good friend Edgar Tabaru. Yes, Edgar will tell you that when the Commonwealth Observer Group team came to Uganda leading to the elections, they looked for Bote at Uganda. He wasn't there. So they went to DP headquarters and they found Semugero in his very nice suit in his air-conditioned thing. So they had to go to Kabarole
To find the president.
to find Bote wrapped up in dust and things like that, busy campaigning, talking to ordinary people. Edgar, like the way Edgar puts in a much more dramatic way than that. So where was in Kabarole campaigning? So no, the 1980 elections was not won from a decent, ordinary place or really comforted the air-conditioned offices of Kampala or my beautiful office in the Mango Tree office in Nagongara. No, it was dusty. I also have one of the now late wife of a late minister who told me that Joseph, we did not have husbands. They had come from 1979, they were relatively young couples, young ministers, you know, and then said we never saw our men. These men were busy going around campaigning. Anyway, so that's Kabarole.
Yes, sir.
Can you imagine me turning up in your compound in Kabarole, Ochieno from Nagongoro of Tororo, you know? In a particular part of your compound, I build the kraal. I put a circle around, you know, and said, this is my territory, man, with a bit of my bush here, I will put, you know, and it's okay.
If I've bought the land,
Yeah.
if it's your compound, it's wrong. But if I've bought and procured that
Bought it
land,
from
it's
where?
okay.
You know,
Nice question.
customary land is not,
Communally owned.
no, yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, sir.
So Museveni's suggestion that, oh, if it's not fenced, so it's just an idea of, I can't just imagine somebody coming to my compound in Nagongara, you fence simply because the fence of, said no, because if it's not fenced, no, it will eat that tomatoes, you know, eat that potatoes. But no, I've come to fence, so leave me alone, I'm not coming to come to your kitchen, I've fenced myself around your compound. That's the purpose of trying to raise people.
Are you suggesting that some people are grabbing other people's land?
And of course it is.
The Balalo are grabbing.
No, it's common knowledge on record. Let's not go there. Look,
We should. It's a very important issue.
Look,
by the way.
the Balalo should leave northern Uganda. The Balalo should leave Acholi. And in fact, Acholi is the last place for this to be practiced. Based on your earlier question, what Acholi people particularly have been subjected to, the war leading to Kony 5, 7, 8 years later actually. Kony came into the limelight nearly 8 years.
Yeah.
After the war in Acholi started. The war in Acholi was started by NRA. NRA guys started targeting young Acholi men of fighting age and started disappearing. May 1985.
95, you mean?
85, no, 86, sorry. May 1986.
Okay.
So Acholi people organized themselves to say, no, we are not going to be slaughtered anyhow like it was in the meantime. So that's how the rebellion around against NRA started.
In 1986.
1986.
After taking
Yeah,
power.
about May.
Okay.
Because NRA arrived in Acholi Gulu about March 1986, 2 months later. Something like that, formally.
Oh,
Is that what I'm saying? I'm giving a very important historical
please
context.
do, please do.
You know? So since then, the war in Acholi particularly, you know, you could not say that Acholi people rose against rather Museveni and started targeting NRA. No. Don't forget NRA, although it was not welcomed with olive branches in Acholi. UNLA, as part of the deal that was Museveni, the DPs and others, UNLA was quite confusingly unpopular in Acholi. The majority of these guys were from those areas. Some people were not particularly happy that you've just overthrown your own government to align with the dubious guys whose grandparents you don't know, without prejudice.
Yeah.
So start from then to see the war that happened, to see the stories about Acholi men being raped by NRA men, people who now try to talk about, moralize about homosexuality, and then coming from Museveni, and Museveni's arm, and Museveni's. So this is what these guys have been subjected to. Then 16, 20 years in camps. Then you leave camps, you return to no home. And of course the blame is, oh, your son, Chikoin. No. Koin did not start the war in northern Uganda. There is evidence that some of those things that were happening were not only Koin. Yes. So basically, it was war by NRA, Museveni's NRA and his commanders, later with Koin, if you want to put it that way. So Koin was part of the group rather than the person. LRA was part of that, but not the things.
There's someone who was there first.
If anything, actually, LRA came in because Koin was saying that Acholi people were betraying them, Acholi, by, in many cases, some of them conniving with NRA, meaning Museveni's people, and not doing enough to defend their people and their land.
Okay.
That's the background. So then fast forward, thanks to people like ourselves, and most of the local leaders in Acholi, and most of the people who gave their lives, people say no, we push for a peace process. The war ends in northern Uganda. A post-conflict situation in northern Uganda required that the regime that had even refused to declare state of emergency, because they refused to declare state of emergency in northern Uganda. So meaning possibly almost like let them die, Yeah? So after the end of the war, the post-conflict situation should be about resettling people, recompensating people for their cows, taking in a crooked-looking and horned cow, yeah, into their places. Because granted, they're very nice cows, they look very healthy, particularly those from the one in Museveni, where Museveni says is his farm. Because part of Kiso's is also, I also doubt it's I need to check the Museveni's tenants agreement with Kiso's. Is it tenants agreement or lease? So I want to know where he got the lease, because I know that's a national
It's
farm.
like a village. His farm is like a village.
Whatever the case.
In Kiso's,
So you see, anyway, but
continue.
and I'm told the cows, I don't know what they eat,
They are very
but
healthy.
very likely it's their taxes.
But haven't you seen the budget? I think we pay medication for those cows. Yeah, and I'm not fabricating things. There's money for medication, for, I think, immunizing.
For
cows or
Kiso's
something.
demonstration farm, okay?
Yeah.
You see, so
And it's in billions.
So those guys, so those guys are not particularly ugly anyway, but I'm just trying to say they're strange in Acholi because they're not Acholi cats, they're not Nagongra cat, So all of a sudden, these cows that need to be stocked, that NRA stole, that possibly LRA also stole. You see what I'm saying? Possibly other people stole, people lost their land, lost their homes. I know friends who are in exile, in parts of the world, different parts of the world.
Yes, sir.
I know people who are in Tororo. I know people who ended up going to Tororo as women to get men. Most of them actually came to settle in Biela, where Museveni wants to use as an example that because actually came. No, these guys were running from war. I'm a refugee scholar, so I know about what these issues are all about. So point is, so this is what happens. So what you need to do is give people psychosocial support, give people emergency support, take people back to their communities, sort out people to make sure that they reclaim their homes and places. People reclaim their land. Yeah, you re-engage people in terms of what they can or cannot do. Side by side with that, it talks of psychosocial support. Make sure that you've taken health services, meaning that amongst the places where you cannot buy medicine should be in Acholi and lying on test. But particularly if I stick to Acholi, where because we're discussing Balalo, in a post-conflict, that's what we do. And actually, these funny global organizations that pretend to be very, very distant, like those are the agencies, including the refugee organizations. Those are things that should be doing.
But
make sure we put health services there.
Before we even delve
no, I'll come.
Because there's something that I'm losing here, and I feel aren't we fostering more divisionism when we make statements like the Balalo should
No, I'm coming to that. Then you've interrupted me very early on.
It's okay.
You've interrupted me very early on. So that's what you do in a post-conflict, actually. So medical services. And then educational institutions, rebuild the schools, rebuild the infrastructure that has been lost, build the roads, not as a charity, you know. What UPC, we don't build the roads, you know, equip the schools, make the children of this place go to school and don't charge them school fees. That's what you do in post-conflict situation. That's what needed to be done in post-conflict, actually, after the guns went silent.
To try to rebuild.
Yes. By now, you'd be having emergent young graduates, and then next to that, when it comes then to their farms, is their sim, is their cassava, is their maize. Theirs. Not you going to teach them what to do. And then eventually, with their cattle, you help them to restock their cattle, which they've been demanding for. Yeah? So with that, there would be no land for Balalo in Acholi. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then finally, if you then realize there's land in Acholi for commercial farming, you see what Acholi does best, the uniqueness of Acholi, yeah, is good commercial land. Let's see how they can mechanize their animal husbandry. What does government do? That's what I'm saying? For them. In Karamoja, I know they go and steal the gold, you know, but you don't say that because the Karamoja, they will steal the gold. You know, we are now going to carry the rocks of Karamoja and carry them, and then we can mine them from Rakitura. You see, so really, that's needed to be done. And it was
I'm
not
sorry,
done.
but I'm not convinced, Mr. Ochieno.
No, you're not convinced because I'm giving you background rather than the answer.
The answer itself.
So that's what needed to have been done. So then fast forward to the Balalo thing. Instead, you impoverish the people, some of whom you had repped, meaning your forces had repped and done all this kind of stuff.
Yes, sir.
You begin to pick a few of them and you begin to give them a bottle of water. Oh, yes, thank you. Yeah? And all of a sudden, your generals, whoever these generals are, I'm told in Ankole there are only 2 generals, by the way. Meaning, Bushenyi, meaning Ankole of Bushenyi, because there are 2 Ankoles, without prejudice. So Ankole Bushenyi, there are only 2 generals, one of whom is Utafire anyway. So there's only one general whose name I don't know. The rest of the other generals are from a certain sub-county in the other side of Ankole. I know we're talking figures about CEOs, things like that, you know. So these funny generals go to Acholi, they've got the money, they've got the guns, they've got a huge number of cattle, and some of them is believed are not necessarily from recent Ankole Ugandan citizens. Some of them are people who come from elsewhere. They go to Acholi. Why Acholi? Now, Karamoja has got cattle. Karamoja has people. One of the biggest challenges we've been having in Karamoja is this thing about exposure for land and water since independence. We've never said that the Karamojong should cross to Teso.
But we've never refused him to.
No. We've never said so. Have we given them guns? Instead, we use guns to kill them.
Yeah.
We've never said Karamojong because many times about cattle grazing and cattle grabbing for Karamojong. You know what I'm saying? Because of space. We've never said they should go to Acholi. So why are the Balalo? And who are these Balalo? Are they Ugandan citizens? Are they gazetted? Where do they get the guns from? Where do they get the monies from? You know what I'm saying? So that the Balalo thing of Acholi is not about tribal thing. It's about a factual Balalo thing and Acholi thing. The Balalo that I had in Agongre when I was growing up, I saw them. Predominantly, granted, they were predominantly looking for after other people's cattle, but they also had their own cattle. You know? But they were not grabbing land. They'll spend time in their swampy places, and then people will take their cattle and look for. They're not grabbing land.
But there are reports saying that these people are procuring land.
But procuring land from who? First, it's a customer land. They're not supposed to buy. They connive with a few individuals, and I've heard stories that some of the individuals, and I challenge shame on them, some of them, they're given dubious money from the sex checkers, you know, the balance from Mabati theft, they send their children to go and study abroad. The good thing is that
because people are receiving money. That's the truth. There may be a bit of land grabbing, but people are receiving money.
I know they're receiving money corruptly. That's what I'm saying. It's corrupt and it's irregular.
Okay.
You know? Number 2, you are doing some kind of mini specializing, is it cloning of ethnicity? So you come from here, you will have a spot of us also in there.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
But then if
You know,
if
the
we're-
Baganda, interestingly, the Baganda in Acholi.
Yeah.
In fact, they're the largest number of business people, main traders in Gulu.
that's
Is there a problem?
No. Not
If
yet.
anything, actually, traditionally, historically, thanks to Museveni used Baganda to teach Uganda and other Ugandans how to hate Northerners, and particularly Luo people, and particularly Acholi. So there should be more hostility between Baganda and Acholi. There's none.
But when we reach aren't we going to reach a point where you come to Kabarole and I'm like, Ochieno, go?
No, I hope it doesn't reach that.
Because now,
when was
if
the last time you saw me come with my 3 car? I don't have many. With my 3 car from Nagongara and grazing on the side roads of Kabarole. If it's not somebody's farm, when? Because no, we need to be bold enough and stick to this, so that we don't take that blackmail. I know you're making a journalistic thing. It's not Ochieno coming from Nagongara with 3 cows. I can tell you today, I cannot come with my 3 cows, yeah, and go to a particular corner of Nyabushozi and graze my 3 cows. And merely graze, and after I've taken them, because these days people specialize, like, you know, Museveni has got a toilet which is like a farmhouse, you know, equivalent. I've got maybe a wagon, and then I take my 3 cows to sleep, they've grazed. No, it will not. Will it? It can't.
It can't, that's true.
Why in Acholi? And by the way, these guys were chased in part from Bunyoro, part of Toro, but particularly Bunyoro. They tried it in Teso too. Why in Acholi? So there is some sense of criminal and insulting arrogance and impunity in this country.
Is Museveni handling it right?
No,
in your perspective?
of course not. He's part of the problem. Museveni is part of the problem, and this is Museveni's thing.
Then that speaks of a certain identity or character of Mr. Museveni that is dubious already.
That you don't know.
Hypocritical. Because he has sent out a lot of, you know, articles or
But you
statements
okay, so
condemning
what president directives are not respected?
That is one of them.
So if you're a president and whose directive is not respected, what do? You resign. Isn't this the 3rd presidential directive?
Yes, over that.
No,
issue.
it tells you that it is just basically cover up, face thing, pretend. And the 3rd one, then you're giving with this one hand, you take with the other. And as I said in that directive, Museveni says, oh, those ones who have not enclosed
Fenced.
should go. So what about those?
Because the issue was people were saying,
But-
the Occupancy is entering our gardens,
No, but
spoiling.
No, because you've used it and you use the spoiling the garden. So what about the ones which are not fenced? Which is fenced? Who are they? Where did they get the money? And I said, where did they get the guns? What did Museveni's brother say, Sally? Oh, even he does not understand. Of course, the two of them is the president and this is his deputy president brother.
De facto president,
You
they
know?
call him
Yeah,
that.
all the doesn't know. Oh, there's some senior generals, some people here. Who are they? And you're a young Ugandan from Kabarole. And this conversation takes place as national conversation. And you let it go? And doesn't bother you? And even Museveni said, all these Bararo, do not play around with them. And doesn't concern you. You are from Edgar, you're a young man from Kabarole. Right now, you are a victim just the other month in Gulu. Simply without prejudice, by virtue of your look, who is a Westerner and his name is Karuhanga. And we don't know whether it's Karuhanga from the other one who is a Mulalo. Actually, because it's told, he could easily pass for a bit of a Kagame. And by the way, no, I think he's the other one.
Mr. Cheno,
That is what we need to take away from our polity. But to do so, we need to be able to do the right
But
thing.
isn't it-
And yet, partly because of the extremes of what Museveni and his group are doing, you become a victim. I too become a victim, meaning that I cannot now have a conversation with a young man from Kabarole, or maybe go and date a young beautiful girl from Kabarole, or persuade one for my nephew or for my son, because they'll say that, oh, you Uno, oh, you Mucholi, again.
the things
Just
we,
think about it.
yeah, it's really something that is, it's a time bomb.
It needs to be dealt with. Museveni needs to deal with it. Now, the Balalo question is not an Acholi issue. The Balalo issue is a national issue. Museveni needs to deal with it. He needs to tackle it. He needs to end it. He needs to tell his friends among the Balalo, his brethren, the Balalo, his kin, the Balalo, and his partners in this thing in Balalo that no, these guys, man, they've got enough money. Surely, think about this. Why don't the Balalo, this is their grazing thing. Museveni talks about very addition, the guy can tell an economic guy, man. Very addition. So why doesn't Museveni say that no, you people, the land that our forefathers had no longer exists.
we have to.
No. The land that our forefathers, occupied no longer exists. This other place where we used to go as Bachwezi in a particular corner of Buganda, we've occupied it in Buganda, and now we've got farms and homes in Buganda. So you can no longer move from place to place. So what you will do is instead of having 1,000 cattle, you will have 100. We shall equip them and pump them, and they become big, and then you make money out of that. After all, we now have the guns to protect them, so you do not have to go and graze. And after all, we have enough money for our children. You do not have to sell them in order to take them to study abroad.
The witty part of Mr. Ochieno. Mr. Ochieno, we're in the last 10 minutes, and there's someone who asked me a question and told me I should address it to you as I'm preparing my script.
Sure.
Do you want power? And do you want it through elections come 2026? If God accepts and UPC accepts you to be on the helm, do you really want power? Are you taking part in an election?
We are the political party that has governed this country twice through elections. And we're the political party that believes in elections. I told you when I was giving the introductory conversation that part of political parties and politics, politics about conviction about the values that you believe should form the worldview of society as you see it, and one in which, as you see it, you want to be able to, through election and the mandate of the people, go and take those positions and create those into realities. And that is power. So that you go ahead and get the power, you get whatever it is, get the people's mandate, and go and deliver your world view of society.
It's at a time like this, you believe in elections?
I don't believe in anything else except elections. I know some people
With Mr. Museveni,
I know some people use shortcuts, and Museveni has used shortcuts, but it's also a dangerous thing for you young people to believe into anything else. One, because most of you these days are so much cowards that you don't even want to discuss with me democracy, because we fear. There are even some young people who don't want to be seen with me. There's some young people who don't want to follow me on Twitter. You guys follow me on Twitter. There's some guys who don't even want to send me notes on Facebook or through my WhatsApp messages because we fear being associated. You fear being associated with the political leader. Suppose I was a military leader who was much more organized than Joseph Kony. Yeah? Wouldn't you? So therefore, if you fear even engaging me in the democratic process, how would you who is going to get rid of Museveni militarily?
None, because if you fear the election, how about the gun?
Precisely. So no, I believe that the world today is a world in which there is no terror like the terror which is taking place between Israel and the Palestinians, and particularly with the firepower excess, unnecessarily extra, unexplainable and unjustifiable firepower from Israel, to the rest of the other world, which is basically humanity, but the answer is this, that I believe that we should sell our opinion. I hope many young people will be joining UPC today, as they always do, on a daily basis, by the way, and joining me, and I support them and enable them, including young people who approach me. They don't have to be UPC, but I still guide them. You see what I'm saying? Politically and socially and everything, including academically, by the way, that they do that. But the more you guys do that, the more you become a force for good. My view is that I hope that UPC then becomes, once again, the critical political party with a critical mass of young people that decisively determined that we are a majority political party and organization that then goes ahead and forms a government that is able to cleanse the mess by NRA and we're able to build on the foundation we had at independence and in Obote 2, particularly in health, education, infrastructure, finance, including agriculture, banking, and now, of course, the advance in terms of technology and the environment, which is basically a socialist card that we normally carry, investment in youth and women, and the underprivileged, rural Uganda, and particularly, as I say today, environment, including Kampala, which is the most polluted capital city on the continent. Did you know that?
Yes.
And also to make sure that we push off the mess of the potholes in Kampala, and then we rebuild our railways and roads and everything else. No, that's the Uganda that we want. That's the Uganda that can only be provided for and provided for and enabled and recreated in reality by Uganda People's Congress. I hope that the event that my matters are resolved quickly and positively. I'll be that UPC leader, and that I'll be able to bring the party together, sell it to the critical number of young Ugandans, and then we're able to go ahead and govern. But when we govern, always as UPC, we don't govern for ourselves. We govern for the Republic of Uganda.
You serve. Your parting shot, sir.
Yeah. Balalo should leave Acholi, should leave northern Uganda, and Balalo should return to Balalo. Balalo should return to Balalo. Mr. Museveni should show a good example. And by the way, why doesn't Museveni Balalo, isn't he? Is he?
I think he should be classified as one.
And if he is, then why doesn't he graze? Let him bring his cows to Tororo, then I can learn. I can also graze. So if Museveni can confine
Do you
his...
have a demonstration farm there?
I've got an house, but actually, come to think of it, my compound alone would not be enough. I've got a large compound, but Museveni has got these cows. I don't know where he got all these cows from. Our money has suffered. But anyway, look. So no, I hope that the Balalo can be helped to begin to seek alternative ways in a civilized world, so that some of them leave this process that we're trying to ask people to stop polygamy, asking people to stop beating up children and women, and instead educate women, asking people to stop genital mutilations, and ask people to stop some of these crude cultural things, and then adopt to modern realistic way of a globalized world. Balalo should be able to be helped. They're in very good position to be done. They've taken enough money from our people. They should be able to do that. That's the Balalo. On the question of political parties, I hope the other friends of us in other political parties are able to focus on Uganda first, followed by our political parties and organizations. I believe it's possible for us to come together and have a national conversation which involves all opposition political parties, including Mr. Museveni's political party. But definitely there needs to be a conversation, a post-Museveni conversation. I have initiated it. I'm having conversations with friends in all political organizations, including in NRA, to try and tell them that, well, it is possible for us to have Uganda in which all of us live in harmony, and it is possible for people in NRA to see Uganda minus Museveni. It's basically in their interest. It's a reality that must come. We don't want it to come in a manner like it's a bang where they break their back, but we want it to come in a manner in which there's a soft landing for them, but there's a possibility that the soft landing is a fine landing for yourselves as young people and your children.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Ochieno. It's always a privilege. I can't stop to say that.
Thanks for having me. Real appreciate.
All right. And of course, the viewer, it's you that we serve. So thank you so much for watching us from 7 p.m. up to now. It's been really, really something that humbles us every time you watch us. Thank you so much for all those that contributed to the discussion. And of course, these conversations are had in a heart that we want Uganda to be better. It's not something that we talk about to cause divisionism. We're not politicking. We're talking about critical issues that are affecting a lot of human beings and a lot of Ugandans. So how best can we find solutions to this particular problem? Thank you so much. Please do follow me on my social media platform. I am at Edgar M. Karuhanga, that is on Facebook. You can also find me at Edgar M. Karuhanga, that is still on Twitter. You can follow Mr. Joseph Ochieno, right? Joseph Ochieno.
At Ochieno.
Okay, at Ochieno.
My Twitter at Ochieno, but Facebook Joseph Ochieno, yes.
All right, okay. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Arnold, for everything. You're a gentleman in production. And of course, to the entire team that has made this possible. Thank you so much. We shall see you tomorrow at exactly 8 a.m. The Mighty Drive Show will be here with me and Farida Bikovere. Please do enjoy the rest of your evening. God bless Uganda.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.